Welcome to the WDW Reflections Podcast. Here, we love to talk about the Walt Disney World Resort, the way we remember it, how it's changed, and why we still enjoy visiting the most magical place on Earth. So come with us on a podcast journey as we reflect on the WDW Reflections Podcast. Hey y'all, welcome to the WDW Reflections Podcast, your unofficial guide through Disney World memories and their connections to the parks we know and love today. I'm one of your hosts, I'm Dewey. With me today are my podcast travel buddies, Ron and Tony. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. It's good to be here. It's always a fun time. Looking forward to this episode.
And good morning, Tony. How are you, buddy?
Hey, good morning, Dewey and Ron. We're doing pretty good and very excited about our special show today.
And that is right. Today, we're actually going to welcome someone else here with us today on our podcast journey. We have with us a special guest, Trisha Daab. She is a contributor to the WDW magazine, and she's also a book author. She's written several books about our favorite place, Walt Disney World. So, Trisha, welcome to the WDW Reflections Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like the girl that got let in the boys' treehouse.
What is that? That's Darla on the Little Rascals, right? You've been trying to get into the boys' club.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna date myself. I keep thinking of like the Bernstein Bears book that was like, no girls allowed. And so I'm like, oh boy.
That's all. Hey, you're an honorary member. That's excellent. We'll get you a t-shirt that says that or something. That's awesome. So Trisha, so happy that you're here with us. We're excited because first of all, it's kind of a big deal to have our first guest, but it's also, you're an author, you write for WDW magazine, just so much cool stuff that you're done that we're really looking forward to talking to you about today. So excited, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here. We are incredibly excited.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is a testament to the power of social media, because I think, Dewey, that's how we found each other. I don't even remember exactly now, but I do know Dewey made some comments on the amount of 50th merchandise that I came home with. And I told him that there was more where that came from. I don't think I've ever bought as much stuff as I did on when I was there for the 50th.
Speaking of that, that's a great segue for our very first discussion with you. You are the one lucky person of all of us who actually was there. You were there on the actual 50th anniversary?
Yes.
Oh, we'd love to hear some stories about that. What was that day like?
So I was in Magic Kingdom on the 50th, and I grabbed a couple of fun things from the day, but one of the things they gave everybody that was at the parks was this poster. So it has the actual date on it, and then they had merchandise that was specific to that day. So I feel very, very fortunate. I met up with some friends from another Disney podcast, the Mouse Moms podcast. And they had held 4 places in a virtual queue, because that's how you got into stores for most of the day, was virtual queues. So if you wanted to go to Magic Kingdom to shop on the first, it was not like your typical, Disney will let you spend as much money as you want. Most stores had to have virtual queues to get in. But yeah, so they took me along with them. And so I was able to get some official October 1st merchandise. The shirt that I have on here is one of the shirts that they had that was specific to October 1st. And they had a pin.
What's the pin of?
It's the 50th official pin, and it's got
nice
logo, and it's got the Mickey Castle logo. So there are some times where you see the castle that doesn't have the Mickey shape around it, but with this one it does. And that has the date of October 1st, 2021. So, and then obviously Walt Disney World on it. And so this was really neat, because again, this was you could only get this on that day. And I got a shirt for my dad and a shirt for my mom, and they had a Spirit jersey that was just from that day. So it was a lot, but that experience was kind of crazy, because so you had to get in a virtual queue, and you often had to wait in line to get to the virtual queue. So they would put up a QR code in a specific area, and everyone would run over their phones to scan the QR code and then try to get into the virtual queue. And then when it was your time, you would get notified through the app, and then you would go over and wait in another line. So we were going in over by Pete's Silly Sideshow over in the surface area of Fantasyland, and it was like wound all the way back through like a waiting area that I'm trying to remember if I've ever even been back in this area before, and then into what's normally the circus tent themed store that was completely shut down except for if you were in the virtual queue. And so we waited in this line, and then you could see an area where it's showing you like this is what merchandise is available, and sadly a whole bunch of it was already sold out. I think it was maybe 3:00 in the afternoon, was already gone.
What time did you arrive at the park?
I finally got in at about 8 a.m. So that's another story.
And that's not late.
Well, it was that day apparently. But yeah, so this was about 3:00 in the afternoon, and the park was supposed to open to resort guests at 7:30. They had so many people lined up outside Magic Kingdom that I think if I remember correctly, they started letting people in at about 6:30. So thankfully I had some friends that had done Epcot's 35th on the day. And so they kind of knew like get there early. So they were there super early, thankfully got me a locker, which was amazing because they sold out of lockers by like 8:30 in the morning. There were no lockers left. So then they were doing like virtual lockers. It was fascinating, but yeah. So the crazy part was, so you see this display, and then all of a sudden you're like let loose in this room, and there's all these people everywhere, and they're just like grabbing stuff off the shelves. And I gotta be honest, I was like, I've not done Black Friday. This is kind of what it's like. Like people are like, TV, and it was like, sweatshirt and a Spirit jersey. And I had an idea what I was going to grab. I like knew the people I needed to get something for still, but I kind of got a little overwhelmed because you get this impression like you should get as much as you can.
Yeah,
I don't do the whole buy something and then sell it on eBay. I
Right.
don't do that because I'm like, this is somebody else's vacation too, and you know they should get a chance to get stuff. So, but yeah, so I was like, okay, I need to get my dad something. I need to get my mom something. I want to get that sweatshirt, and I want to get the Spirit jersey. And then I was just like kind of scared because there's just people everywhere. And if you weren't grabbing things, you should get out of the way. And thankfully, a friend of mine was with me, and she's like, "Come on, I'll help you." I was like, kind of felt like Rachel and Friends when they go to the wedding store, and she's like sitting there in the display with the whistle. It felt a little bit like that. And then you went over another line and waited to get into the bigger room, and that's where they had the pins and some of the other stuff. And
wait a minute.
A line for line.
Yeah.
So you were in a shopping frenzy, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, there's another room over here."
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and that's where all the AP stuff was. There was something else in there, and then they had like some just random towels that had nothing to do with the 50th. I think it was just like just in case, because I realized I was like, "Oh, I'll just find my mom something somewhere else," and then all of a sudden I had this panic moment, like, what other store can I really go in? Because so many of it, like Emporium had a virtual queue up until almost, I want to say 10 o'clock. It might've been a little earlier than that, but it finally got to a point where you could just wait in line and get into Emporium. But prior to that, you had to get in a virtual queue to get in. So, but yeah, so, I mean, that was just crazy. And it was interesting because there were no lines for rides at all that day. And
That's crazy.
Well, and I stood by a couple families that you could tell like didn't know what was kind of going on. They was like, "I'm just on vacation." And then I remember hearing this one teenager ask his mom, he's like, "Mom, where is everybody?" Like there's mom, and the mom's like, "Space Mountain's 5 minutes, 7's 20 minutes. Like, what's going on? Like, where are all these people?" It's like, "They're in line for a popcorn bucket." Like, they just released another color. And so yeah, and like literally I think there were 4 colors released over the course of the day, and so like people were standing in line for like an hour and a half per bucket.
So some of the video I saw seemed to show that there were lots of crowds that day, but you're saying that they were isolated into the different merchandise spots?
There were, I mean, Main Street's always kind of, you could, just crowd surf across it. And I felt like that maybe wasn't that vastly different than what I've seen on a normal busy park day. But when you got back near some rides, it really wasn't as much. The places where I felt it was really crowded, obviously during the nighttime shows, Main Street, the Hub, everything was, I mean, just packed. And then, more, it felt like the most crowded areas that I was that day were really like Main Street, and then just extending off Main Street a little bit. Fantasyland didn't, when you got kind of away from the castle, didn't really feel that crowded. Back in that like Peter Pan Small World walkway, that always feels crowded. So, but yeah, when I went on Big Thunder Mountain, and it wasn't really all that crowded over there. And I would say I've definitely seen the park worse. But it was really, the behaviors were interesting because people were focused on trying the 50th food. People were focused on getting popcorn buckets and getting in virtual queues. And so the crowds were really dispersed in a very different pattern than I feel like I've seen before.
I noticed a few bloggers wanted to do rides that were there the first day. Did you get to do anything like that?
I did Small World. I did the People Mover. Big Thunder I don't think was there the first day. I was kept trying to get someone to go to Country Bears with me, and then it just like kept never happening. And then they don't do shows too late. But like I don't think I ever made it really back into Adventureland that day. And so it's weird to kind of think you're in the park for 15 and a half hours, and the list of things you didn't do is much longer than the list that you had given yourself. But it's kind of crazy to think. But I did go on Space Mountain. Trying to think of what else. Dumbo. I was like, I have to, you have to do Dumbo.
So that's the thing people were trying to do. People were trying to do opening day attractions on October 1st, just because they were here 1971 October 1st. So we're going to do it on 2021 October 1st. That was kind of a goal a lot of people were doing.
Yeah, and a lot of people are also trying to try the 50th food. So there were a bunch of foods released that day around the park. So there was a special waffle and drink at Sleepy Hollow. There was a special egg roll at the cheeseburger egg roll cart. I think Casey's had something. They had a special churro over by the Dumbo like popcorn cart, churro cart over there. So there was a lot of people doing like those things, and then trying to visit places too that were opening day. So whether it was attraction or a show or a store or maybe a restaurant, and then they had a whole series at, I was able to eat lunch at Crystal Palace with some friends, and they had a whole part of the buffet was like Walt's favorites.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's super cool. So was chili there? I know Walt loves chili.
There was chili.
Yes.
And next to me, another podcaster, actually, Mike from the Be Our Guest podcast, he was having the chili.
That's awesome. That just popped in my head when you said that. I was like, if they're having Walt's favorites, chili's got to be there.
He's on the list. Yeah, Walt was not a guy that he would not have liked Victoria and Albert's. I don't think.
I agree.
Fancy for him.
So were all the stores related to the 50th anniversary, or were there other stores open that you could go to and just get general merchandise and not as crowded?
Yeah, so like the Winnie the Pooh, the little shop outside there, the one outside Buzz, like those small shops were, and then I think like Star Traders from a bigger store perspective, it's kind of like Emporium and Star Traders, and then the circus, Big Top, that's what it's called. Sorry. So Big Top and Fantasyland and Emporium were both kind of 50th specific. Emporium had non-50th merchandise too, but where the kerfuffle happened in the morning that I think triggered a lot of the we're going to change this because adults can't act like adults on this day apparently. That was when they started doing the virtual queues and trying to kind of limit the number of people in the stores. And the line for Emporium at some points like wrapped literally like all the way down Main Street towards the train station, and then like kind of even wrapping around the road there. So, and it was hard because there were really cute windows. They had the windows decorated, but you couldn't see it because there was just, a big line of people in front of them the whole time. So that was on my list that I didn't see. I wanted to see that, but But yeah, so like the Christmas shop wasn't, Memento Mori wasn't, the shops. There was one shop over in Frontierland that was, because they had a special pin set, I think. So that one had a big line thing happening, and I just like.
I was just wondering if the ones that weren't specific, if you could luck out and find maybe just a rare 50th in that store or not.
So I did a lot, like where I got this track jacket was over actually at World of Disney in Disney Springs. So it wasn't like those were the only stores. So at Epcot, the new, and again, I'm so sorry that the name is escaping me. Mouse Gears, right? I think that's
the Creation Shop.
Yeah, the big giant one that they just redid. So they had some 50th merch there on the day that, on the 1st at Epcot too. So apparently there was a Spirit jersey that was for Epcot and a Spirit jersey that was Magic Kingdom specific. And some people braved like going to Epcot first. And apparently there wasn't the like 50th merchandise craze over at Epcot that was happening at Magic Kingdom. So, and then some people braved it and booked their park for Epcot and then hopped over to Magic Kingdom. I didn't do that because I didn't want the risk of like not being able to get into to Magic Kingdom. Just because they hadn't released really what the capacity was going to be and what they were looking at. And but the crazy part, I booked my trip only a week before I left. I thought about going and was like, no, got too much going on with work and kids, and I'm not going to go. And then my husband and I were talking about it, and he's like, I love you, but I don't even think I'm going to want to be around you on the 1st. If you're like, he's like, you are going to be he's like, there's nowhere I can take you on the 1st it's gonna like make you happy and be like not staring longingly at Instagram like, oh, I wish I was there. And then obviously Happily Ever After had its last showing on the 29th of October as well. And I honestly, that was as much of the drive for me to go to be able to see that one more time, because I had taken like 4 trips to Disney and hadn't seen that show on any of those trips. And I have a book series named from a line in the song from that show. And I was like, I can't believe they'll play it again. It's such a good show. They'll play it again. And he's just like, oh my gosh, just go, just please go. And we're like, I think we can figure this out. It'll be, one of my colleagues was like, oh my gosh, you have to go. I want you to go. She's like, because, you have to do this. It's so cool. You write about it. And it's the 50th. Like, you have to figure this out. And so I ended up, I think it was the Saturday before. So maybe like Saturday the 14th or something like that is when I booked my trip, and I was going, or not even, it was a little bit after that, but and I left that Tuesday, I think it was the 28th, if I remember correctly, or the 27th. So I got in on Tuesday, and then I left Saturday, the day after the 1st.
I can't believe that there were Magic Kingdom park reservations available that late. I'm shocked at that.
I would agree.
I am too. So you have to have your ticket to book your park pass. And so a friend of mine is a travel agent, and she books all of my trips for me. And I had been just doing some high level research to kind of figure out like, okay, can I even get a hotel room? And because I really like staying on property, because I felt like that would just kind of add to the magic. And so I've always wanted to stay at Pop Century, and I tried to see if Pop Century was available and couldn't get it. And so she went in, she was able to get Pop Century, but she told me, I tried to get you an Epcot or Magic Kingdom. I couldn't get you in either one. I was like, okay, I'm like, it's okay. My understanding is they release stuff building up to some of these, so I'll just keep trying. And the day she gave me my tickets was like a week and a half before I was leaving. It was on a Saturday. And I went and just tried to get Magic Kingdom and was able to, and was just shocked. Like I felt like someone was punking me. I was like, Disney, there's no way. And I got the email confirmation, and I got like the confirmation in the app, like Magic Kingdom, October 1st, 2021. I was like, oh, it's meant to be.
That's excellent. That's awesome. I can't believe you got in on the 1st. waiting, having just, kind of a spur of the moment, decided to book the trip. So you're right. It was meant to be. That's super, super cool.
Yeah. And to even be able to get into Magic Kingdom on the 29th, which was the last day for Happily Ever After, there was probably 6,000 to 7,000 people camped out in the hub for hours before the show. I mean, that show has you want to talk about a fan base and a very loyal following. That show definitely does. I mean, it was really neat to see it for the last time surrounded by 1,000 people that just all were like,
it's a very emotional experience when that happens. Listen to the complete show on your favorite podcast streamer. Follow us on social media at WDW Reflections Podcast. See you real soon.